Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Super stoked to be here.
Hell yeah, man. Me too. Stoked to chat with you. We chatted a little offline, and I've seen you guys at conferences, seen booths and stuff. And actually did use the service a couple months ago, which we'll get into. But I wanted to ask you the question I ask everyone. And if you didn't know, guys, the reason I'm asking this is because Mike is in Japan right now, living there, which is mind-blowing, which is awesome. But where are you originally from?
From Connecticut. If I'm meeting you for the first time, I'm most likely telling you New York because nobody knows or cares where Connecticut is. But yeah, originally from Connecticut. I was in Stamford, Connecticut for like 15 years.
I've been to Connecticut. I've been to that famous pizza place.
Pepe's?
Yes, Pepe's. I was in Boston and then drove through on my way to New York, and it's like a famous burger place, the first hamburger supposly
In New Haven?
I think it's where Yale is. Is Yale in New Haven?
It's in New Haven. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, Connecticut. So very cool. I like to that kind of just sets the tone for like who you are, some of your background and stuff.
I grew up in a town of 25,000 people, so there's that. And moving to Stamford, obviously, it was a little bit bigger.
And so, were you always, because doing a little research on your background, were you always like interested in entrepreneurship? Because it seems like looking at your resume, it's like leadership role, CEO, like VP, all these like leadership positions. Like, did you kind of see that in yourself as a kid, or did that come later? Like, how did that even start?
I was a total fuck up as a kid. I don't know if I can say that, but yeah, total mess up as a kid. And I had no idea what I wanted to do or be until I was like 19, and I still didn't know. And
still young, super young.
Still had no idea though. I put myself through college, and I didn't finish. I got to the last year and I dropped out. My family had my father had a marble and granite shop that had been passed down through generations, and I was the third generation. So I ended up working there as a part-time thing, and ended up taking it over when he died. 2 years later, I ended up selling it, and we were able to, or I was able to use that to fund everything moving forward. It was, I guess that was kind of a huge advantage I had, I guess. But yeah, that was the only brick and mortar I ever had. I took on a whole bunch of consulting roles to learn how to do things. I failed a whole lot. I remember the first marketing company I made back then was called like M&D Marketing Solutions. It was with a buddy, Derek, and we had no idea what we were doing. I read like Ogilvy on advertising and a bunch of like other books about advertising. And at that time, I was a young guy, and I just thought, this looks glamorous. I could totally do this. I could make up campaigns and come up with really cool ideas and bounce a basketball off the wall or a baseball off the wall. I got this. And I went to my first networking event back then as the CEO of M&D Marketing Solutions. And I got drilled by like every other marketing professional in that room. And I realized I had no idea what I was doing. So I ended up, taking on a couple jobs, learning how to do things outside of retail, and manufacturing and brick and mortar, and applying all of that to the following companies. I've had 3 exits now so far. I'd love to have a 4th one day.
3 exits, wow, man, that's impressive.
Well, the first one was kind of a gimme. It was 4 years in the making.
Unique situation, no, definitely. But I mean, it sounds like all that was kind of like setting you up for where you are now, and just it's probably so much experience because it's like different types of industries and different learning to take on those different skill sets and like leadership positions. That's impressive, man.
the key to success with that stuff, and I learned this in the stone shop when I started doing that, especially in leadership, is to understand every aspect of the company as detailed and as fluently as possible. So in the stone shop, great example, I knew how to do every aspect of that business. Like I could come in on a weekend and I can get I can go outside with the crane and grab a slab if I needed to on my own, and get the forklift and bring it inside and put it down on the CNC machine and program the CNC machine to cut it out the countertop and bring it over to the polisher and take care of that, and make the OG edge and polish the OG edge or whatever. And I was able to do every step of the way, so I can understand that here's what needs to happen for the people who are doing this day to day. Like, here's what they're capable of doing. I'm not asking too much because I know I've done it myself. Or, here are the problems they're facing. I know because I've done it myself. I think it's really, really important. Just understand your business. Don't just, think about like think about the money or think about the exit or whatever, try to understand like the actual business itself. And when you're working with clients and customers, you can give them realistic expectations and, you can talk to it, in an intelligent way, give good advice.
Yeah. And then you can kind of talk to all departments and like what you're talking about. I was just listening to a show, the father-son company that manufactures like shoes and belts and clothing. And the son is now in charge of the belts. And he was like, he knows every aspect of like the belt making and designing. And so same thing, it sounds like, that's a good way to go about it. So when did you start getting into podcasting? Were you like, I call it like the boom, which was maybe like through COVID and maybe a little before, or like, when was your journey into that? Like circa what year?
Sure. So I can
even just as a listener. Well, just as a listener.
I'll be totally honest on this one, on everything, but this is anyway. I'll explain it. So when we started Mo Media, it was about 5.5 years ago. We weren't in podcasting at all. We caught our teeth in the space in newsletter subscriber acquisition. At the time, we were the largest driver of engaged subscribers to just about every major newsletter in the U.S. Everything from Morning Brew, The Hustle, Inside Hook, Newsy, the list goes on. We were either the largest part or a significant part of their paid acquisition strategy for a good amount of time. About a year and a half later, so that would be about 4 years ago, Morning Brew with Business Casual and The Hustle with My First Million. They were like, look, if you could do for us what you're doing in newsletters and apply it to podcasting, we would love to buy it from you. And admittedly, the very first podcast I ever listened to in my life, the very first podcast I ever listened to ever was about a month before we launched MowPod. And so we actually built our own podcast to actually learn what the pain of like I mentioned before, like understanding the product and understanding the process. We started our own podcast to go through what are the pains in building a podcast. Like how challenging is it to organically build an audience? How challenging is it to work with a hosting platform and select a hosting platform? Like, what are the things you need to be thinking about as a podcaster? What are the metrics that are important? And not just to me, but to the people I talk to when I'm talking about the podcast, all these things are really, really important. So we built our first podcast product. The original one I won't get into too much because it didn't work well. And then the refined version of that was Mopod Boost, and that still exists today on the enterprise and now on the self-serve side. And then we have another product on the Apple follower side, and we're about to launch another amazing product that I will get murdered if I talk about.
Wow. So it wasn't even really on your radar, but you were crushing it with the newsletter thing. And then these companies were like, hey, like we need to get into podcasting. Help us. If you could have the success, if you can help us with the success you did with the newsletter, with podcasting, like we'd be happy to keep working with you. So right place, right time. Also, I think probably your past experiences from all those jobs. And then with the newsletter stuff, we're kind of like preparing you. The universe was like, you can do this. You have a track record of X, Y, and Z. Let's go into this new thing. It's probably going to be tough, but like you had the chops to like do it. And I guess I would ask like, so are you, and well, let's backtrack. Let's talk. So what is Mopod exactly? Give us like the elevator pitch or the more in detail. Just tell us a little bit about the company.
Sure.
What you guys do, who's it for, that type of thing.
Sure. We're advertising technology for podcast audience growth, and we're the largest podcast audience growth company in the U.S. We drive.
You heard it here first, guys. The largest.
You hear it all over the place. We're not shy about that. So, I mean, we work with everyone from independent podcasters on the self-serve front to the largest agencies and networks and largest independent podcasts in the U.S. and the U.K. We've been expanding out. We're trying to start exploring APAC a little bit. We're actually sponsoring Podcast Day Asia and Radio Days Asia in September. I'm pretty excited about that. It went last year. It was awesome. But yeah, as a company, our goal and everything that we build and everything we do is around understanding podcast audiences, understanding what's important to the podcasters, to the teams behind those podcasts, to the advertisers who are sponsoring those podcasts, and just the space in general. Just understanding it and then building products that kind of check those boxes and solve the problems that people are having. One of the problems, obviously, is listener growth, download growth, follower growth, long tail retention and long tail listenership. Data, understanding not just that we got downloads, but where'd they come from, how many, or how many of them are coming from, males versus females versus other demographics like age, HHI, which interest targeting segments or browsing audience segments are they coming from, and which ones aren't working as well. And we just try to provide as much data as possible so that people can make informed decisions and moving forward.
And are you a software guy? Because I've noticed a lot of your experience, including Mopod, a lot of it's I don't know if it's considered a SaaS company or what, but when you're talking about data and analytics, and I've used the platform, and there's a lot of automated stuff. Are you a software guy, or do you hire that out, or do you have good developers and stuff on your team? So
I used to be a software guy before it was cool. Back in the Apple IIe and IBM 386 and 486. Back in those days, I used to think I was a cool hacker and used to know how to do cool stuff. With BBSs and all that jazz. And then I never had formal training or education on programming. All the stuff I taught myself, like C+ back then, and Basic and GW Basic and Q Basic and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I never learned all the new stuff. I understand it. I certainly understand logic. I'm a very logical person, so I understand the logic of programming. But I can't write any languages now.
Code and stuff.
Yeah, I can't code anything. Right. So we have a great development team that takes care of all that. My partner Joe. He's on the marketing and operations side, and he directly interfaces with them and kind of does the napkin sketches of here's what needs to happen, and then they make it.
Oh, love that. Yeah, because I was thinking about it. I was like, damn, to build something out like what you've done with Mopod, just seems like there's a lot of stuff working on the back end. Is there, what's your use of AI within all that? Is that even a thing within Mopod?
Yeah, majorly. Yeah, majorly.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, just like everybody. So the Mopod Boost Enterprise, which is our self-serve, is only a recent product in the last year and change. But
that's what I've used.
Yep, exactly. The enterprise version, the barrier to entry is $3,000, and that is very prohibitive for the independent podcaster. Most indie podcasters aren't dropping $3,000 on a marketing campaign. But that whole system that we built out, 66 different SSPs, supply side partners that we're partnered with, giving us access to most of the real time bidding on the web for native display ads. 1200 by 627, 800 by 600, 600 by 600, image accompanied by a title, a description, sponsored by ad by MowPod, leading back to the landing pages. Where was I going with this? Like I said, my ADD.
Just the self-serve boost and kind of how that AI works behind the scenes.
Yeah,
because you plug in, I believe it was your RSS feed, and then, you pay for a certain price, what you're willing to pay. And then that gets, explain a little how that works on the back end and the front end, because then it gets blasted out. And where did those where those audience members come from?
Absolutely. So just going back to the enterprise, because that's the starting point. So all of the process there had been manual. We had media buyers who were putting together the interest, anywhere between 3 and 10 different programmatic strategies, everything from interest targeting to browsing audiences to contextual, retargeting and lookalike audiences. Lookalikes are people who look like the audiences that we've driven to other shows, and kind of hit an IAB download. alongside other programmatic strategies. And ultimately, this was a very manual process, and it continues to be a very manual process on the enterprise side. Even things like the reporting and kind of pulling what that looks like for each of these is a very custom, or the creative production on enterprise. We have a creative director and a team that will put together the ads and the landing pages and all that kind of stuff. So when we built self-serve, the idea, we built it when AI started becoming a big thing, and obviously APIs into OpenAI, into other AI platforms all opened up, and it became really easy to start integrating that into your workflow. So we took the manual process out of it and put AI behind it. So the audiences that we're building that is based on AI. So when we're putting together a programmatic audience for Mopod Boost Self-Serve, we're looking at your show description, your episode descriptions from your RSS feed, and we're building out, here's the, for the browsing audience segment, for instance, here are the audiences that make the most sense based on all this information and the categories that you happen to be in. And in some cases, we'll actually look at lookalikes for your show and look at all of their episode information. It completely depends on how much data we have. And if we don't have enough, we'll expand it out. But yeah, we are basically automating with AI in the self-serve platform the manual processes that previously we had to do for Mopod Boost, and it's been working fantastic. I mean, it's generating great audiences. We have human eyes look at every campaign before it goes live. So before something actually goes up, it just goes into a queue, and we'll take a look at it. And ultimately, if everything looks good, or if we need to add anything, we'll add it. And it goes live. So that's why it takes about 4 hours after you actually launch for something to actually go live.
Yeah, and the 4 hours, that's still quick. I mean, I remember when I did it, and I was like just impressed at how quick it was. And I think it was like even the next day, I bought a small campaign just to test it, or maybe 2-3 days later, and it had completed. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is quick. It did what it said it was going to do, and I was happy with the results. That being said, where do you think, as far as like trying to grow and market a podcast, what do you think of people that can't afford enterprise? Maybe they're doing some self-serve stuff, boosting when they can. Maybe they have a monthly budget, or it's just kind of like when they can. Like, what are some non-paid strategies that you've seen work well for growing a show? Because I think that people don't realize how challenging it is now to grow a podcast. I used to produce a show, been around since, God, I think they said 2006. And they were like, back then, it's called The Art of Charm. But it's okay to say it. I don't know why I'm being all like weird about saying it. It's called The Art of Charm. And
it's a cool name.
Yeah, it's been going, I think 2006, 2007, something like that. But anyway, they said back then you could release an episode and it would just be like growth, like up and to the right, like thousands of downloads after thousands of downloads, and it would just take off. And now it's a little more saturated and a little bit more challenging. So have you seen anything in addition to a paid strategy help grow shows?
Well, I want to be super clear. You should not take on a paid strategy in any way, shape, or form until you have an organic growth engine down pat. It makes, and this is true for podcasting or newsletters or anything else that you happen to be doing. If you don't have an organic strategy that is actually working, by throwing money at it, it won't fix the underlying problem that people aren't sticking around. It's not growing because they're not referring it to their friends, whatever. So build an organic growth strategy first, and we can talk about what some of those things are. But build that organic growth engine first, and then once you have that established, you have baselines to compare everything to. Now let's start exploring some paid channels, whether it's in podcasting, host read ads, or DAI. Don't do DAI for podcast growth. It's terrible. It's good for gathering data, but it's terrible for actually getting listenership. Host reads are great if you pick the right shows. But they can be really expensive on the right shows as well. And then obviously, Mopod is a decent source for long tail growth. Mopod Boost Self-Serve, it's a 3 to 5% incremental lift on average. So just take that, when you kind of put that in perspective, if you're getting 150, or let's just call it 100 downloads from a Mopod Boost campaign, let's just call it even 100. That's 3 to 5 people that are listening to new episodes when you release new episodes, and that makes sense. You have a whole bunch of people coming in, sampling the episode, seeing what's this thing about. They were on the web, they were targeted for this, they saw the ad, they clicked it, and they went in, and ultimately ended up listening. And a couple of them will stick around and listen to new episodes, and that's pretty reliable. It boils down to the content, though. Release schedule, the quality of the content. If the releases are not in the same day every week, or it's inconsistent, that's actually works against you. Length of the episodes, super long episodes. Joe Rogan's the exception, obviously, but super long episodes tend not to do really, really well in terms of retention. They're great for building really, really loyal audiences, but it takes a really long time to build those up. But on the organic side, going back to your question, it depends on the kind of show that you're running. Branded is very different from like a true crime show, or like my show is Friday Night Karaoke. It's a show about music and about karaoke, and we play a whole bunch of music on the actual podcast. And for us, our organic growth engine all came from Facebook. We built a Facebook group called Friday Night Karaoke during the pandemic. The idea was negativity free, ad free, gimmick free, just karaoke. And we brought all these people that love karaoke into this thing where they're posting hundreds of songs of themselves singing every single day with like weekly themes and all that. And the podcast, the idea behind it was, all right, we have all this engagement in this group, all these people that like are, they love what it is. We're not monetizing it. They don't feel like, they don't feel like it's just leading to us making a whole bunch of money. It's a very pure feeling in this group. We take 10 of their songs every week and we play them on the podcast, drink a bottle of bourbon, and talk about how awesome they are. And that's it. And then we don't run any ads on the podcast or anything. It's like literally just about a love of music. And that for us worked really, really well as a baseline. And then obviously like asking for referrals from your audience. Don't be afraid to ask. If you don't ask, it won't happen. So do that. If you're doing anything on social and you're pushing out and you're making pushes anywhere, ask them not to listen to your podcast. Ask them to follow your podcast. Then they get notifications. It's way smarter than asking them to listen. They'll do what you tell them to do, or at least a percentage of them will. And if you tell them what you really want is for them to follow you, the percentage of them will follow you.
Dude, I'm hearing 2 things in that. One is don't sleep on Facebook groups, because and depending on your age and stuff, I don't know, like, I feel like Facebook kind of like died out, but it's having this resurgence. And I think the power of the Facebook group is huge because it just builds that community. And it's funny, I'd listen to a podcast called Niche Pursuits. And he has been, the host Jared, he's been talking about his Facebook group like the last couple months. He's been mentioning how like it's growing. And yeah, it's just been a great engine to drive people to where he wants them to go. And it builds that community. You can ask questions, you can get involved. And I think the power of those groups is huge. And it's funny, like I'm 39 and I check my Facebook here and there. I'm not really active on it, but I feel like it is having a resurgence. And then speaking of paid strategy, if you want, you could even like run Facebook ads to drive people to the group or whatever you want to do. But
we do that now.
Like the idea you said, like start with that organic growth, get that baseline, get some data, kind of know like what your goals are, know like who's listening, why they're listening. Then you can jump into that paid strategy. And the other thing is like, good for you starting a podcast that's not like related to your business. I mean, this podcast is about podcasting, and I speak to people, service providers, just people that are in the podcast industry, and it's great. I love it. But since that's also kind of my business, it's just like it's just so much podcasting and content creation talk. I like the idea, Friday night, have a drink, just unwind and talk about something that's fun,
And you can join the group.
I do try to tell people in this group, to like start the podcast that's like kind of a lead magnet for the business. But And I still think that's a good strategy, but man, it can be overwhelming. So to hear somebody that's doing something a little bit different is cool.
Well, I mean, when everything is a lead magnet, like, which I feels nowadays everything's a freaking lead magnet.
Oh, it's so exhausting. I hate even hearing about it. Oh, it's a lead magnet, or so much content, and you got to do this, you got to do the podcast, the email newsletter, the YouTube, and it's all got to like funnel back to like your product or your service, and it's just that's the kind of the world we're in. But it's exhausting, dude.
It is exhausting. As a consumer, it's exhausting too. It's exhausting that everything you do is leading to. All right. Well, it's like, every girl you meet wants to, you go back to, their club and spend money at their club. It's like, oh, I just wanted to take you out to dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. It's, it's a weird world, man. Like we're in with all that stuff. And yeah, like you said, you see in all like the quote unquote like gurus or experts on all the channels talking about like their business or talking about something related to business. And it's almost like they're like less like humanized or something, because they're just always talking about that. It's refreshing to see like a little bit change of pace.
Thank you.
So speaking of social, like, do you guys do a lot of like marketing for the business on social? Cause I see you guys around, but it doesn't seem like that's like your main, like you don't have a huge presence on all the channels.
So to be very frank, the point we just made about how everything feels like a lead magnet, I didn't want our business to ever be like that. I wanted it to grow based on the merits of the product, and we did exactly that. We built a sales team, I think the best sales team in the space. When we build a product, we test the hell out of it with actual active clients, and we get the feedback. We like to understand, like, is this what you need to see? Like, how else do we need to do this? What does this mean? What do you do with it after the fact when you're done spending with us? Like, what does that mean for the business? And we like to understand all that stuff, because the way we grow is on referrals. It's on like live presence. It's on obviously repeat business is massive. We have a 70+% retention rate since the beginning on clients. So we haven't really felt the need to go and just blanket the market with, hey, get podcast growth. Our salespeople are not allowed to go just spam lists of people or anything along those lines. You're not going to see
I get so much spam. It's like
you're not going to see any of that
talk
from us ever.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because the amount of like spam, a little bit to my email, mostly on LinkedIn. About like people blasting, there's some revolutionary AI product that's going to change the way I do everything and take all these tasks off my plate. It's like, dude, I get it. I get the hustle, but it's like, dude, first of all, like it's at this point, it's sounding like all these AIs are doing the same thing. And it's like, and they just, the cold, the cold like blast is beginning to be a bit much. So that's good to
get an email like, hey, Mike, it looks like you made some stuff in stone. I love stone. You're like, come on, dude.
Yeah, it's always like your brand looks like it. I've been following you. I love your content. They probably haven't been. And you look like you'd be a good fit for X, Y, and Z. It's like,
and then they get right into the pitch.
The pitch is like instant, dude.
Yeah.
It's that's got to be like going by the wayside eventually. Like, because I haven't talked to one person who likes it, and I don't know like what their closing rate is on that kind of. Can't be good.
But it doesn't have to be great. So it just has to. If it costs them, X to send out a bajillion of these things, and they are converting at Y, and they're obviously bringing in that revenue. As long as Y is bigger than X, they're good. They're gonna keep doing that forever as long as it's me. It's like cold calling and building call centers for cold calling. I mean, nobody likes getting a freaking cold call from anybody ever. Like nobody wants to get pitched on the phone. I literally, and this is the world we're in. I'm sure you're the same. I don't pick up my phone unless it's a name that I recognize. I never pick up my phone. I got like usually when I get a call from a number that I don't recognize, I'll send it to voicemail, and then because it's an automated thing, I have like a voicemail notification like immediately after. Like it's like you have a new voicemail, right? And if it's like maybe a real one, which nobody leaves voicemails anymore, but if it's maybe a real one, it's like a minute later, then you get the voicemail notification. So I got one this morning and I checked. I have like 500. I didn't realize I have like 560 unheard voicemails in my inbox. But my point being, this is where we're going with this, right? It happens in the call centers and it happens with cold calling. It's going to happen here too eventually, I hope. At least, hopefully we have better filtering for this stuff. Gmail's getting good with that on the email front. But hopefully we get better filtering. I get still bombarded with text messages that I don't want. And, the regulations don't seem to matter.
Oh, it's out of control. I used to get like, sometimes I don't do this anymore unless I really am bored, but sometimes I'll pick them up and then mess with the person on the other end and give them a whole, get into it, make them think that they're going to scam me or whatever it is and then drag it out. But that's kind of fun. There's some stuff on YouTube I watch.
I've seen those. Yeah.
Where
they scam the scammer, or they don't scam the scammers, but he's hacks the scammers while they're talking and hey, Lewis, what? No, not me. How's your wife?
I love that stuff. It's just fun to kill time. But dude, you mentioned live events. Was that like the conferences? Yeah.
So live events. My partner Joe and I are live events are in our blood. We love it. We've done it a ton in the past with other companies, and he had one of the largest event companies for venture capital and angel investment companies. It was called Funding Post, and he did that for 20 something years as one of the things he did. He had rent out hangars in California and have Tim Draper come out and all these VC guys and angel investors and founders and all that kind of stuff. And similarly, I used to throw raves when I was younger. I used to,
hell yeah.
I used to throw punk rock concerts and hard rock concerts and stuff like that. I'm a big event guy as well. In the job space, when I was working in the job space and I had all county jobs, I was running job fairs and all that. So yeah, events is we love the live interaction. We real people, looking at somebody in the eye, talking to them about, seeing exactly what they want, what they need, what they're interested in, and getting a sense for who the people are themselves. We love live events. So we're at everything. We sponsor almost everything. And we try not to make it tacky. We don't ever want to be we never get on stage and talk about our product ever. We never, we're not pitching all the time. What we're basically, our sponsorships and our involvement in these events is basically throw the big party. We love throwing the big party. So after day one, usually we're throwing a big karaoke party, or I think Podfest, the very first event we ever did in podcasting back when we started, was Podfest. I think in Tampa.
It's usually in Florida, yeah.
Yeah, so right after COVID was kind of coming down a little bit, and we had a boat on Tampa Bay that we rented out. And we got a karaoke machine on the boat. We had a flair bartender on the boat and a whole bunch of food all laid out and all the people on there. And it just kind of went out for 2.5 hours with people singing, and it was drinking, and it was the greatest time. We had a perfect timing. We had nothing to do with it. We had fireworks going off on this point when we were going by. I guess some people were out there just doing fireworks, but it looked like we did it. So it was great.
Dude, that's badass. Yeah, the yacht party, that's everybody's dream. You got to be on a yacht, having cocktails. That's the life right there.
It wasn't quite a yacht, but it was a big boat. It wasn't a yacht.
Well, the reason I asked about the events is because I've seen you guys at Podcast Movement. I don't think I've talked to anybody at one of the booths, but I like those events because I have friends that I meet and hang out, and that's a good, always a good time. But I'm always kind of iffy. It's do I want to go? What? I never know what I hope to achieve by going, other than talking to people. I find 70% of the speeches, the talks are just kind of mediocre, and so I don't know, but I guess, if there's parties like that, hell, I'm in.
I have an opinion on this. So as a founder, having conversations and not having expectations when you go into them. And I think that's a big snafu when you are a new networker or a new founder and you constantly think that, you need to always be pushing your product, even if it's to the wrong people or whatever, you just need to always be pushing your product. And it's not about that. It's just about conversation and understanding where other people are at, understanding their problems, understanding kind of what they've seen and what they get excited about and all that kind of stuff. And then relaying it back to and tying it back to here's what I'm doing and connecting those dots. So I guess the moral of the story is go find as many dots as you possibly can. And then the game you should be playing is how do I connect them? Don't go and try to get people to connect your dots. Don't be like, hey, you need to connect to this. Just try to understand, like, what dots do you have? What dots do you have? Great. I'm going to connect these. I'm going to connect you to you. It has nothing to do with me. I think you guys are a great fit. And that stuff goes such a long way. And it also, like, those conversations inspire you. You don't know what your product is going to be tomorrow. You don't know what your company is going to be tomorrow. Maybe you're not going to be, maybe you sell your company. Maybe you close your company. Maybe you leave your company, whatever it happens to be. But that next thing you do, I guarantee you is going to be based on all the conversations you've had up to that point. So have lots of freaking conversations, get perspective, be a human freaking being.